Uncle Johnny, thank you so much for allowing us to be inside your home and talk.
Of course,
Yeah,
anytime.
yeah. I wanted to start off with what is your earliest memory?
Probably 5 years old,
Mm-hmm. What were you doing?
just being a kid.
Just being a kid. All right. And where was this memory? What town were you in?
I wasn't in town. I was on a farm that my dad had rented from a family member until I was about 6 years old. The owner of the property sold it to somebody else, and we had to move.
Why'd they sell it? Was it? Did you guys own it or were you
No, my
renting?
dad just leased the farm.
Oh, okay. All right. Only for one
So,
year.
so we had to find a place to move, and about a mile or so north of where we were living then, my dad found a smaller farm, 38 acres, and he borrowed $1,000 on a handshake from one of the neighbors to pay for it. And the first couple of years raising strawberries, we paid it off.
Oh, so strawberries. How long did it take you guys to pay it off?
Not more than 2 years.
2 years. Wow. Okay. And with this strawberry, you guys had to make the strawberry patch, right?
Yeah, we had to cut down with a two-man saw, me on one end, my dad on the other end, cut down 2 acres worth of trees and then cleared the land to plant strawberries.
How'd you guys cut down the trees?
Two-man saw.
Two-man saw?
And then we cut the trees down and we cut it up into chunks about 2 feet long, because until I was a freshman in high school, my mother cooked with wood and we heated the house with wood.
And what did you use the wood to like build other things or
No, strictly firewood,
strictly firewood?
or
Okay.
wood to cook.
If you had to guess how many trees were in that 2 acres you guys cut down, what would you say?
Probably 20 or 30.
Wow. How long did it take you guys to do that?
And I don't know, a long time.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. When you were living in Arkansas, you stayed there up until how old were you?
I was 18 when I moved out here.
18 when you moved out to California. And you worked on the farm with your dad. And what did you guys, you farmed strawberries, but what else did you guys farm?
Well, we had 3 cows and 2 horses, and part of the land was we grew hay to feed the animals,
Okay.
and then we had cornfields because we had a couple of hogs every year for meat. I never tasted hamburger until I came to California.
Really?
Strictly pork. I asked my brother one time why my folks never butchered a beef, and he and I neither one know the answer to that.
Okay. Were cows harder to come by or more
They
like
were a
precious
necessity
a necessity? Yeah.
because until after I moved out here, if we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it because we had no outside income,
Mm-hmm.
except for a little bit we got from selling the excess milk to a Kraft cheese factory nearby.
Oh. Was it the Kraft cheese factory? Was Kraft as big of a company then as it is now?
No,
No. Was it just like just local small?
I don't even know where the plant was.
Mm-hmm.
We had 10-gallon milk cans, and we kept it cool in the summertime by my dad bought a couple of whiskey barrels cut in half,
Mm-hmm.
and filled them with water, and set the milk can down in there to keep it cool.
Oh, okay.
And one day, the Kraft cheese factory guy showed up with one of the cans that we delivered. He'd picked up earlier, and the milk had soured. So my mother made 30 pounds of cottage cheese.
That's a lot of cottage cheese. And how long did it take you guys to eat that cottage cheese?
I don't even know what we did with it. Could have fed it to the hogs.
Ah, okay. Um, when you were living on the farm, where did you go to school?
I attended a two-room schoolhouse about 2 miles away. I had one teacher for 4 grades, and I had another teacher for grades 5 through 8.
Okay. And how long was school for you? Like on an average for the day?
It was just an average school year. I don't know what the actual date was.
No, I mean like how long was like your class? Like were you there for 6, 4, 5 hours?
I'm guessing 8, probably 2:30 or so.
Mm.
I don't remember exactly.
What was your favorite thing that you studied when you were a little, like, or that you were taught?
Recess.
That was mine too. What did you do for fun during your free time when you were younger? Like probably like 10 or younger.
I had because there was so many years difference between my age and my brother's age.
Mm.
I pretty much entertained myself.
And how'd you do that?
Well, there was 2 guys that lived nearby. They loved to hunt, and we hunted squirrels in the spring and then possums in the fall.
Possums.
Yeah, because they'd skin them and sell the hide.
Oh. What did you guys use possum hide for?
They were sold it to somebody who used the hide for something.
Oh.
So when we found a possum up a tree, he had a couple of dogs. One in particular that was very good at finding the squirrels in the spring and the possums in the fall.
Mm.
And when we found one, we used a flashlight to locate them. And somebody would hold the flashlight and you wanted to shoot him right between the eyes.
You guys use like a BB gun or
No, it was a 22 rifle.
22? Oh,
That way the pelt wasn't damaged. So you get full price for the pelt.
I see. And how old were you when you did this?
I was in my young teenage years.
Okay. And when you were in high school, you went to a different high school than
I had to ride the bus into the nearest big town,
Mhm.
which is Springdale. And I did well in grade school up through eighth grade. I graduated code valedictorian in my class in 8th grade. And I finished high school with a C average.
Ooh.
And I think my GPA now is like 2.5.
Well, we have a saying, C's get degrees. So.
Yep. They're also the one that get the good jobs.
Yeah. When you were in high school, what was your favorite subject?
PE.
PE, same to recess. Did you play sports at all in high school?
We played basketball in the wintertime when we couldn't get outdoors. And we played softball in the spring. I love softball.
Softball?
I continued to play softball with the team from my church that I started going to when I came out here. And back then, the men played fast pitch.
Mm.
And it's sad that they don't do that anymore.
What is that?
Underhand and fast.
Underhand and fast. All
Just
right.
like the girls do in college now,
Mm-hmm.
which happens to be one of my favorite sports.
Okay. And when you were in high school, were you on the baseball or softball team?
We had a baseball team, and I wanted to go out for baseball, but I had to ride the bus home after school, and then practice was after school, and I didn't have any way to get home if I didn't ride the bus.
Oh,
So until I was a senior in high school, there wasn't any point in trying to join the team because I couldn't go to practice.
I see.
But by senior year in high school, my dad took a job in town, and he would pick me up at the high school after practice.
Mm-hmm.
I played a total of 4 games. I batted 4 times, and I walked 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
So my baseball career was not much to talk about.
What years were you in high school? What year did you graduate?
1954.
1954.
So 50 to 54.
When I think of 1950s, I think of the movie Grease.
I've never seen that movie.
You never seen the movie Grease?
No.
No? With John Travolta and what's the Olivia Newton-John?
I knew it was in it, but I never watched it.
Oh, classic. It's one of those ones. So when I think of the 50s, I always think of like guys with like black hair pompadours and leather jackets and with like a toothpick in their mouth or something like that, walking around. Greasers, pretty much. That's what. Were you a greaser?
No.
No.
When I graduated from grade school, from the 8th grade, I told my mother I'm not wearing overalls to high school.
Mm-hmm.
I said I want Levi's,
Levi's.
or I'm not going.
Oh, did you get the Levi's?
I did.
Nice.
$3.75 for a pair of Levi's in
Ooh.
1950.
Wow. How much are a pair of Levi's now? $60, probably. I think.
I don't buy Levi's anymore. I buy Wranglers.
Oh, you've changed over to the Wranglers.
Well, I buy a brand new pair of Levi's. Within less than a year, the knees wore out of one of the legs.
It's not built the same.
Not built the same.
So they had those pair of Levi's for high school. And how long did those Levi's last you?
Good question. I'm probably still wearing them when I graduated from high school.
Ooh, nice. 4 years. Good time. Good time. Did you guys in high school, did you guys have like dances or anything? Like,
No.
One of the things that I had when I was in high school was like a prom or like a homecoming dance.
You got to remember, I'm a farm boy.
Hey man, this is why I'm asking these questions.
No.
As I don't know.
If they did have them, I wasn't interested in going.
Wasn't your type of thing?
No.
No.
We did have something in grade school. We used to have what they call pie suppers.
Pie suppers?
Yeah, the girls would bake a pie, and then they'd have an auction. And if a guy liked the girl, he'd try to be the highest bidder and to get her pie so he could sit down and eat it with her.
And he would like pay for it, actually.
Yeah.
What? How much? Like, do you remember like how much they would like bid, like the price for these pies?
Probably $2 or $3.
Whoa, that's a lot back then.
Doesn't matter if you're the highest bidder.
That's great. What made you decide to come to California?
Well, they had the worst drought they'd had in 50 years. And the 10 acres of corn my dad and I planted that spring, there wasn't enough corn on the cob to even harvest it.
Oh.
Because the drought hit right when the corn was maturing.
Oh.
And I thought to myself, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life, farming? And then my cousin comes along right in the middle of this drought. And he and his family had moved to California the year before. And he saw what was taking place in Arkansas. And he said, why don't you come go home with me? I said, I might just do that. So I told my folks I've saved up a little money working for the neighbors, and I'm going to pack my suitcase and go on vacation to California.
Vacation?
I never told my mom that I had no intention of coming back, but a few years after I was married, Nelda and I were married, we went back to visit my folks. And I said to my mom, I said, you pretty much figured out that I wasn't coming back when I left, weren't you? And she said, yeah, I knew.
And did your brother, Don, was he still there during the time that you...
Yes.
Mm. And when did he come out to California?
He joined the Navy, and he was stationed in San Diego. And after he'd spent 4 years in the Navy, he got discharged in San Diego, and he came and stayed with Nelda and I for a while, until I encouraged him to find a job and move out. Sorry about the tears.
No, it's all good. Um, During your time as a child in Arkansas, that was during the time of World War II. So 1945 is when it ended, I believe. So you would have been probably around 10 at the time? 9?
45?
Yeah.
9. I
9?
was 9.
Do you remember hearing anything about that war at the time?
Oh, yeah. I experienced it firsthand.
Mm.
For one thing, there was an Army base not too far away, and there was airplanes flying overhead all the time, World War II airplanes.
Mm.
And I got so good I could tell you what kind of an airplane just flew over.
Oh.
And then in the meantime, in addition to the strawberry patch, my folks planted a grape vineyard,
Mm.
Concord grapes, because Welch's had a processing plant in the big town nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad and I were there one time, and there were German prisoners of war from the local Army base. They were using them as workers to unload grapes off the trucks.
Whoa.
And they were still wearing their German uniforms.
Really?
Yeah.
And where was this? This was near your farm? In Arkansas?
In the big town of Springdale,
Springdale.
where the Welch's plant was.
Huh.
Yeah, they were actually using German World War II prisoners from the near Army base
That's very interesting.
as workers.
Huh.
And they were still wearing their uniforms.
I didn't even know that. That's really interesting. And you would they still had them in their uniforms? Huh.
Yeah, they were still wearing their uniforms.
What else do you remember about that? The war, other memories.
I know my dad didn't get drafted because he was the sole provider for his family.
Ah, that makes sense. And then the next war would have been Korea, right?
Yeah.
That was in the 50s, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember anything from that one?
I remember I missed it when I got drafted. I got drafted in between Korea and Vietnam.
Ah, okay. Sweet spot.
Yeah. Thank goodness for small favors. I spent 2 years active Army and 2 years reserves after I got out of the active Army.
Mm.
And I was stationed in Kentucky for 2 years at Fort Knox.
Do you have any favorite memory from that time, or was the Army a time period where you're like, I'm glad it's over?
There's lots of not so good memories that I don't remember, fortunately.
Mm.
And the good memories I have, I still think about them sometimes.
Mm.
Until I got my first promotion, Nelda couldn't join me in Kentucky so we could move off base. And so on Friday night, we just hung out in the barracks.
Mm-hmm.
And one Friday night, my friend Gerald said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Nothing. Come and go with me to the craft shop." And at the craft shop, I got introduced to leather tooling, leather craft, and I learned how to tool leather.
Oh.
And I had wallets. I built wallets, tool wallets for, I think pretty much every guy in my outfit had at least one of my wallets. And my pride and joy was a holster belt and holster for a Ruger Western style 22 revolver.
You made that for yourself and your friends?
No, I made it for a friend of mine.
Oh, you made it for your friend, I see.
And it was all tooled, the leather, the belt and the holster was tooled leather.
Wow.
And I dyed the background black, and the actual design from the tooling was natural. And then I lined the backside of the belt with red velvet
Nice.
and laced it all the way around.
Whoa.
I'm sad because I never took a picture of it. That was probably the best thing I ever made. And I had a full set of tools, so I could do leathercraft anytime after that. And I have since taught my daughter Julie, and my granddaughter Kate, and my son John. They all know how to tool leather.
Mm.
And John now has my tools from the Army days.
Mm.
And I gave Julie a set of tools for Christmas. And I think Kate has a small set.
Oh, nice.
I think John's making a purse for Sharon right now. He's still working on it.
Birthday present?
Something present.
Mm. You mentioned Nelda, so we're going to get there. You met her in California, right?
Yeah, I actually saw her the day I got here, but I never actually met her until a month later.
Mm.
Even though her family and my cousins I was staying with, family all went to the same church.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw her pretty regularly, but never was introduced to her. And a month later, my cousin that I was staying with, invited a good friend of hers to go to the fair as his date. And he asked his date to ask Nelda if she'd go as my date. And that's the favorite part of my book. We picked the girls up at one of the leaders in the church that worked with girls. They were having a spaghetti dinner or something, and we picked them at her house. And we were in my cousin's 48 Chevy coupe. And I had ridden over there with my cousin, his sister, and I in the front seat. So when we got ready after we picked the girls up, while he was going to the front door, I got in the back seat so to make room for his date. And when the girls came out, Nelda got in the front seat with my two cousins, with my cousin and his date, and I'm in the back seat, and Nelda's shaking her head. I wonder who my date is. But I can't say for sure, but about after our first date. But I know after the second date, I knew she was the one for me.
Yeah. How'd that second date go?
Of that, I don't remember. I just know that I liked being with her enough that I didn't need to look for any other girl.
Mm.
Unfortunately, she was 15 when I met her, and she wanted to date other guys. I didn't like it, but I understood it.
Mm.
And after about 3 years, on a Valentine's Day in 1957, I proposed to her on Valentine's Day and hoped she would say yes, which she did.
Nice.
And we were together almost 61 years.
Wow.
After we got married in October of 57. I'm a totally different person having met her.
Mm. How long you guys dated for? About 3 years?
About close to it, 3 years.
3 years. And then you're married. How was the first couple years of your guys' marriage? Was it scary or confusing or?
Well, neither one of us had very much money.
Mm.
And we got married in October. I got laid off my job in November.
Where were you working at the time?
At a machine shop in Ontario.
Mm.
I didn't understand why they laid me off and kept a young guy that didn't have as much experience as I did. until years later I finally realized they laid me off because I couldn't make parts that weren't scrap.
What do you mean by that?
I couldn't make good parts.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah.
So I later on in life I turned that liability into an asset.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because you were a machine shop teacher.
That came later.
Mm.
When I got out of the Army, Nelda's dad, who worked at Lockheed, talked to the head of production at Lockheed about a job, and he said, "We're not hiring right now," but he told me how to find somebody who might be. And fortunately, I got hired, and I worked for this company for about 6 years until I voluntarily changed jobs because I wanted to go to night. I wanted to work night shift so I could go to college at Cal Baptist. They didn't have night classes back then.
Oh. Mm. Did Nelda work at a job early in your guys' marriage? Or?
She was working at the bank in Upland, First National, which is downtown, and it's a Chinese doctor's office now. But she worked in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And then, fortunately, after I was transferred to Kentucky for my active duty time, once she was able to join me, and once I got my first promotion, she went and got a job at the bank on the base, and she worked there until I got discharged.
Okay.
And then we came back to California, and she got a job at United California Bank in Ontario, and later on worked for Security Pacific until she was expecting Jared, and we decided it was time for her to stay home with the kids. That was tough.
Yeah.
I was already working 2 jobs, well, 1 job, and it was tough financially for a while until we got accustomed to it. But I worked 2 jobs most of the time we were married until I got hired by Mount SAC.
What year was Jonathan born?
1965.
1965. And where were you guys living at the time he was born?
In the house that I still own, right next to your mom's house.
Oh, in that house? Okay. Yep.
We bought it in 1962, after I got out of the Army. We didn't have a place to live after I got discharged from the Army.
Okay.
So Nella's dad had found this house that we bought in '62. A guy had bought it new. He worked for a bank, and they had offered him a transfer to San Francisco. And so he wanted to sell the house for his down payment and take over the payments. $99 down and $99 a month.
For the house?
For the house. $14,250.
And a $99 down payment. Wow.
$199, excuse me.
Oh, $199.
$199.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then $99 a month.
$199.
I bought that house so many times since then, I don't lost count. Well, when you raise 4 kids, you do whatever you have to do.
Right.
If that means refinancing the house, which I did several times. And the last time was a couple of years before Nelda passed away. I finally, after all these years, used my GI benefits and got a VA loan.
Oh.
Which it has on now.
Okay. Yeah.
4% interest.
So, and then when did you guys adopt Jana?
Well, we were married for 8 years and hadn't had any kids. So we decided we might not be able to have any kids. So we started the adoption process. And not too long after that, Nelda was expecting Jonathan.
Hmm.
And since we'd already started the process, after a couple of years, 3 years maybe, since my dad is a family was all boys, and in my family, my immediate family, just me and my brother, we kind of figured maybe the deck was stacked against us on having a girl. So we adopted Jan in 1968. She was 5 weeks old. And we told her the only difference between you and the other 3 kids is we got you in a different place. We got you at the county offices, and we got the rest of them at the hospital. And we never kept any secrets about her being adopted. But I've learned over the years that there's a downside to adoption.
What's that?
Even though you tell the kids that are adopted from the get-go that there's no difference between them and the natural-born ones, the kids talk, and it hurts. You probably know that as well as anybody.
Yeah. My situation was I was an only child, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can understand that side of things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, she was a pain to raise.
Yeah. And Jared was born in
1975.
1975.
October 1975.
And was raising him?
Well, I just found out about 2 or 3 years ago that he hated school from kindergarten on. And he put up with it until he got into high school. And the high school didn't know what to do with him, and we didn't know what to do with him. Then I find out a couple of 3 years later, ago, the reason why he didn't feel comfortable in high school and they didn't know what to do with him, he's got a high IQ.
Too smart.
I think his IQ is 139. I don't know if that's high or low, but
Ooh,
I've been told it's high.
that's high. Because the average is 100.
And Caleb also has the same IQ.
Whoa,
He's 139 too.
that's high. Yeah.
So finally, after trying to homeschool him, we tried continuation schools, and finally decided that we just let him put school aside until he was old enough to take a GED. And when he got old enough to take there's a book available for kids like him. And Nelda bought him the book and found a class in Pomona at the adult school. And he went to class the first time, and when it came time for the second class, the second week, Nelda asked him, "You ready to go to class?" "No, Mom, I already know all that stuff." So he never went back. And as soon as he turned 16 years old and he was eligible to take a GED, he took it and he aced the whole thing.
Wow.
But it wasn't until years later, many years later, that we found out the reason that kids got a high IQ.
And then, what year was Julie born?
1980.
1980. And how was her upbringing?
She was a pleasant surprise.
A pleasant surprise.
We never thought we'd be able to have girls.
Ah, I see. Yeah. What is your favorite memory together with Nelda and all the kids?
Camping.
Camping?
Yeah, we started out with a tent, which is Nelda and I originally, and then we went used the tent a few times after John was born, and then we upgraded to a trailer. It was a homemade camp trailer with a tent canvas top, And I didn't get the canvas when I bought the trailer, and I remodeled it and turned the inside into benches over the wheels and a table that turned into a bed. And Nelda and Janice slept on what would have been the tabletop, and Jared and I slept on the floor with our feet under the table they were sleeping on. It was the ugly thing, but it was functional.
Yeah.
And then eventually we upgraded to a 8.5 cab over camper, and that was the last thing we used to camp.
Which is the one that I remember you guys had one in your guys' backyard?
In Grandpa's backyard?
Yeah, or yeah.
That was the same one.
That was done. Okay, yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
It got damaged in the rain, and John took a sawzall and cut it up in little pieces and hauled it into the dump.
Yeah, I remember that, seeing that growing up. Where did you guys go camping? Like, what was your favorite place to go?
We spent a lot of time at Lake Henshaw, and we also spent time at Hemet Lake up in the mountains. It was one of the few places where you could camp right up to the water.
Oh, really?
Your campsite's right next to the water.
That's really beautiful.
Yep. And when the drought hit years later, you could walk for 10 minutes before you got to the edge of the water from the campground.
Oh.
It just almost dried up. Sad. I don't know what it's like now since we've had lots of rain.
Yeah, because they said the drought's over, finally. What is it, 30? The drought that's been going on my entire life.
Pretty much.
It's like 30, 31 years. Yeah, so, yeah, it'd be interesting to see the water levels there if it's changed. What is something that you experienced growing up that you feel no one else can experience anymore?
Well, I was thinking back not too long ago about how times have changed since I was a kid. And I can't believe a farm boy ended up designing parts for a surgical manufacturer and working as a manufacturing engineer with no schooling or professional experience in either one of those areas.
Must have a high IQ.
Not that I know of.
Now I see where Jared got it.
I've never been tested, so I don't know what my IQ is. But as far as career is concerned, one of the blessings that I can look back on is let me put it this way. I was so frustrated with the last machine job I worked in. I was tired of making the same part over and over again. And I was laying in bed one night thinking about this. And I said, Lord, I'm tired of doing what I'm doing. And as clear as anybody ever spoke to me, he said, I want you to teach. So I started gathering information on what that involved. I had to have a minimum of an AA degree, and I had to take a bunch of training to learn how to be a teacher so I could get my credential, which they don't require anymore. I put in all that labor and all that studying and all that time in the classroom, and they don't even need it now.
And you first started teaching at Mount Sac, or was there a place before that?
I started at Citrus College.
Oh, Citrus College.
I met the guy who was the only instructor in that program. And I thought, the reason I met him was because one of the guys that was working on second shift with me, I was the supervisor, and he's one of the two guys that helped me on second shift. had been teaching a class at Citrus, and it sparked my interest. And so I met the teacher and asked him. I said, "Would you let me know if you have an opening for a teaching job?" And I bugged that guy for 2 years, probably at least once a month, until finally he called me one day and he said, "You still looking for a teaching job?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, I don't have a teaching job, but I have a teacher's aide job." I said, "I'll take it."
Mm.
And in being the aide to the teacher who was in charge of the class, he finally decided that had been doing this long enough, he was going to retire. And apparently he felt like I was capable of taking it over. So he said, "I'm not going to be back next semester. I'm going to let you have it." I said, "On one condition. You come back and be my teacher's aide for next semester." So he did. And then I taught there for about a year and a half, and an opening came up at Mount SAC for a 1 school year replacement for a sabbatical. And that got my foot in the door at Mount SAC. Unfortunately, when that year was over, I couldn't find another teaching job. So I did whatever I could find. I worked for a contractor friend of mine, and I did painting on the side. I just, whatever I could find. And then since they got to know me at Mount SAC, I get a call from the dean one time, later on, a couple of years later. He said, "I don't know if you're interested or not, but we have a special project. We need a teacher for it." And I said, "I'm available." And it wasn't a regular school, wasn't regular classes. It was a special project that had been put together by General Dynamics and the State Employment Department of California and Mount SAC to train people who had been laid off from a career that there wasn't any openings. And we got ready to graduate the first class after about 9 weeks. And come to find out, the left hand at General Dynamics had been talking to the right hand, and they said, "We don't need any more trainees." So the director of the project that they'd hired asked me and another lady and his secretary and one of the classmates from the electronics class that was a part of this program. And we found jobs for every one of those classes.
Mm. Wow.
And the director of the employment department of California declared it a failure because it didn't meet the intent of the project.
What was supposed to
Train people for General Dynamics.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We got him jobs, but he didn't care about that. The fact that the contract wasn't met to the letter, he can call it a failure if you want to, but as far as I'm concerned, it was a success.
Yeah, definitely.
And then right after that, there became an opening for an extra lab teacher in the regular machine shop program, because Ford had shut down one of the assembly plants and dumped all these people on the unemployment rolls.
Mm-hmm.
And they were allowed to go to college to learn another trade. And our beginning machine shop class normally had a limit of 25. We had 65 that next semester. And the second semester after that, we still had 55.
Huh.
Since the class back then was, the lecture and the lab were two separate courses.
Mm-hmm.
And the classroom upstairs was big enough to handle 65 and 55, but the lab required another teacher just for the lab.
Mm-hmm.
So they hired me to do that until the fall of '81, and the senior instructor applied for and got hired as the dean, and they offered me his job.
Oh, okay.
Shortest interview I ever had for a job. our dean and a higher level dean. We met in the vice president of instruction's office, and the vice president looked at me and he said, "John, you want the job?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do. You got it." That was it.
Nice.
I told people years later, after I'd been there for a while, if I applied for the job I already have, they wouldn't hire me because all I had was work experience and an AA degree.
But you knew what you were doing.
I used to tell my students, 90% of what you get from me is going to be personal experience. I use the textbook to stay organized with topics, but what you're going to get from me in the class, I'm not going to teach you how, not tell you how to do something if I haven't already done it myself. That's pretty hard to argue with. I worked there from 81 to 2011 when I retired, because I was offered a financial buyout that year. I would have lost that if I had turned them down.
Right.
$25,000 is hard to walk away from. So I didn't. One of the things I learned about retirement, when you retire from something, you better have something to retire to. Because the first couple of years after I retired, I was lost. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was sitting in the den in my recliner just like this one. And Nelda walked in the room and said, "Don't you have something to do?" I said, "I'm retired." So what does that have to do with anything? Don't you have something to do?
But that's where you found the...
But a couple of years later, Chaffey College called me and asked me to teach a class. And they called me again in 2015, 17, and 19 to teach one class. Because the design software that they were teaching, engineers and trained professors are the only ones who know the software well enough to teach it. And engineers are not available because they work daytime. And teachers that know that software probably already have a good job teaching somewhere else. So it was hard to find somebody to teach that class. The 3D printing you referred to, I learned that at Mount SAC. When I first went there, I was teaching conventional machine shop, engine lathes and mills, and some specialized equipment. The computerized stuff didn't come into play until after I had been there several years. So I had to learn this new technology at the college so I could teach it to my students. And for a while we had two of us that were full-time, and the other instructor taught the software classes and I taught the labs. And he retired. I inherited all the software classes, and that's when I had to learn SolidWorks and Mastercam and SurfCam, all the machining related software packages that we offered. And I still use SolidWorks today after having to teach my SolidWorks students how to do 3D printing with their projects. I decided probably about 10 years ago, the price of 3D printers for home use dropped down to under $1,000, and I thought, at that price, I can't afford not to have one. And I've had several. I think I'm on probably my sixth one.
You've had 6?
I've had 6.
Oh.
The one I bought, the first, had 2 print heads, and I found out it was more machine than I needed. So I bought a smaller one that only had a single head, and I had trouble with it all the time. And I discovered these little ones like I have now. And for $150 each, you definitely can't afford not to have one if you know how to run them.
Ooh, yeah.
And I just bought this new one I paid between 500 and 600 for it, but it's so much more capable and bigger print size, but also more complicated to learn, which is kind of where I'm at now. Fortunately, I have a young man who was my teacher's aide at Chaffey College that has some of these machines like mine in his lab. So I rely on him to teach me how to use it.
When did you start making things with your 3D printers hobbies? Like when did you just start making like the cars, the trucks? And I remember when the fidget spinners were a thing. You were making fidget spinners.
I made hundreds of those things about 3 or 4 years ago. I actually made a bracket for your mom's patio table.
Yeah, I remember that.
I made that on the first machine I bought that had 2 print heads.
What is your favorite thing you've made on a 3D printer?
Probably that car that is got it running.
Which one?
Yeah.
All right. See it. This one?
And my other favorite is the red one up on the shelf.
The red one on the shelf. I'll grab that too. These ones here.
It's a Jeep.
The Jeep. And how long did you say these ones took? This one's heavier. This one's more solid. How long did they take to make?
Between 6 and 7 hours. And the purple one I made in an hour on this new machine. I'm getting ready to run one similar to that Jeep as soon as I get my friend over here to help me set it up. So my goal with this new machine is I've got about 5 or 6 models that I've made over the years with my older machines. And I'm going to use them because they're already designed to kind of learn how to use this new machine. And then I want to start designing parts that take advantage of the bigger size. These parts I've been making are about 4 inches long. That build plate on this new one is 10 inches.
So you can make much bigger.
So I'm thinking about designing some new projects similar to these ones that I've been printing, and make them about 8 inches.
Okay.
Just to make sure I have plenty of room. And then this machine can print 4 different colors on the same part. I was watching a video yesterday on how to do that. You actually take the computer model and you paint, quote unquote, paint the areas that you want a different color. And then when you're done, you assign one of the 4 colors to those different colors that you painted, so to speak.
Oh.
And it'll paint one part with up to 4 different colors.
Huh. That's really nice.
I was wondering how they did that. I didn't know until I watched that video yesterday. I had no idea. At what point do you do it? And once you've downloaded the model to the machine, well, actually, I don't think you download the machine. There's a app that goes with the machine on my laptop, and you load the model that you're going to build into that app. And I think that's where you identify the various colors that you want printed. Like one of the projects I'm going to try to use is a panda bear. It's basically black and white.
Yeah, that's simple enough. That makes sense. Yeah.
And then I have a project that I designed years ago. It's to hold your business cards.
Oh, little business card, like
Tray
for like a desk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the letters on it come out of it at an angle.
So it's like long ways.
You have the letter laying flat,
Uh-huh.
and then you move it till it's at an angle.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's
Does that
awesome.
make sense?
Yeah. I'm following you. Yeah. How you gonna do it on that machine?
I'm going to try it eventually.
Okay.
If I can make the tray itself out of one color
Mm-hmm.
and just the letters of a contrasting color so that it stands out,
Mm-hmm.
it should be very easy when I figure out how to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I can't wait to see that when it's done.
I might have something I could sell. Custom business card tray
Yeah.
with your name and your company information all on printed in a contrasting color.
Yeah.
I was thinking a few days ago how things have changed since I was a little kid,
Mm-hmm.
and it just blew me away. I kind of mentioned earlier about a farm kid designing a surgical instrument with no engineering training and no practical experience in designing.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got to thinking about other things that have happened. For one thing, until I was a freshman in high school, we had no electricity in our house.
Mm.
So that meant we had, at the very least, an ice box. And there was an ice man that came by once a week and dropped off a 50-pound block of ice for the ice box. But that's limited on what you can store in there that'll stay cold. I think milk and a few things like that would stay good. But as far as meat's concerned, we had to eat it or cure it. And Jared just brought me some bacon that he'd home cured.
Oh, nice.
And I said, this is exactly what your grandparents used to do when I was a kid. They would cure bacon and ham. And the rest of the pig, we had to eat it while it was fresh.
Well, do you remember what the process was for curing it?
All I know is they had something they injected into the ham, and they used the brown sugar, which Jared used when he cured the bacon.
Mm-hmm.
I told him after I had a couple of slices, I said, this tastes like the bacon that my folks used to make.
What other memory do you have that would be like something that's changed so much since, that's changed with the times nowadays?
Well, my folks didn't have a phone until years later. And they didn't have water in their house until after I got discharged from the Army.
Wait, water?
The water in the house, we had to carry a bucket from the well.
From a well. What year was that when you got the water?
In 1960.
Oh.
I got discharged on the 8th of December, and I told my parents, I said, we're going to stop by your house and stay until after the Christmas holidays are over. Then we'll go on to California. And I said, while I'm here, we're going to put water in your house. So my dad took his small tractor, and we had to go about probably 300 feet. He plowed a ditch as deep as he could plow with his tractor. And then he and I and my granddad used shovels and picks to dig it deep enough to bury the pipe so it wouldn't freeze. And when I left to come home to California after the holidays, they had a faucet sticking out of the wall in the kitchen.
Huh. Running water.
But at least they had running water.
Yeah.
And I think it was when I was a freshman in high school, my folks decided to tear down the old house, which is the old colonial T-shaped house, where the front part of the T is a 2-story, and the back part of the house is a 1-story. That house is over 100 years old. We tore it down and saved as much of the lumber we could out of the old house and built a brand new house, a more modern one, on the same site.
How long did that take you guys to do?
Took most of the summer.
A summer to tear
Yep.
down the house and to build a new one.
Yep.
How many of you guys were working on it?
Just my grandpa, my dad's dad, and I, and my dad. There was 3 of us.
3 of you guys. Huh. To me, that just is so mind-blowing that 3 people over the course of a summer tore down and built another house.
We tore the first part down and left the back part, the single-story part, because that's where the kitchen was. And then my dad found a surplus medic tent from the military, and he set it up out in the yard and moved my mother's stove and all of her beds. And I remember it raining, and I'm looking at the ground underneath my bed, and there's water running across running under my bed. But we lived in that tent all summer until the house was finished.
Dang.
It was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, and it pretty much stayed the same until after we put water in the house. And then they could make a bathroom an actual functioning bathroom.
Mm.
Of course, they had to put in a sewer line and a septic tank. But they did all that after I helped put water in the house. So when Nelda and I were married and went back to visit the first time, they hadn't done that yet. And Nelda didn't take kindly to the outhouse. One of the things I never understood about our outhouse, it had 2 holes in it.
Wait, side by side?
Side by side.
A group session?
I don't think so.
Did you ever ask your parents why?
I never thought about it until just a few years ago. I got to think about it. I don't want anybody sitting next to me in the outhouse.
I mean, maybe get really good conversations or something. I don't know. But Nell didn't take kindly to the 2-holed outhouse.
Not really.
And then they got plumbing after that?
Yeah, not too long after that, my dad finished making the bathroom into an actual bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
We go back there in the summertime to visit. He had put a shower in there too. You could take a shower and dry off, and because the humidity was so high, you couldn't feel like you had dried yourself off at all. I remember wearing a suit to church during that time, and before I got to church, the whole back of my suit coat was wet.
Oof.
Because of the humidity.
Yeah.
Now, I thought I moved to California to get away from it. Not. It's as humid here as it is in Arkansas. The difference is you don't have to be out in it like you did back there.
Right.
During that drought, we didn't even have fans in the house.
Oh.
The air was so heavy from the heat and the humidity that for an entire month, I wore nothing but a pair of basketball trunks. And I drug my mattress off my bed out on the front porch.
Mm.
And I slept in basketball trunks on my mattress on the front porch of the house. You couldn't breathe in the house.
You couldn't breathe. But then you probably, when you're outside, you're probably getting eaten up by mosquitoes.
And gnats. They have chiggers back there too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When you're in the fields.
Yeah, you
They bite your legs.
Stay out of the fields, you get chiggers.
Yeah.
And ticks.
The good old days.
But then we had lightning bugs that we don't have out here.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, those are really nice to see.
My nephew and his wife and their 2 kids moved to Tennessee last summer, and they're experiencing lightning bugs for the first time. We used to catch them and put them in baby food jars.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I used to see that in, like, movies.
Yeah.
People always doing that in movies. That's nice. Is there something that you learned that you feel growing up, something that you learned growing up that you feel that kids nowadays aren't learning?
Yes, a lot of things.
Mm.
But the thing that comes to mind right off the get-go is the fact that my family always taught me, if somebody hires you to do a job, do it better than they expect you to do it.
Mm.
In other words, they taught me a good work ethic.
Mm.
And fortunately, all four of my kids, I've been able to pass that on to them.
Mm.
And hopefully the grandkids too.
Because one of the things you've been telling me about that amazes me is like three of you guys built a house. You guys put your own water line in. You know, you did your guys' own sewer plumbing in your own house. Stuff like that I feel like are things that people like my age or younger look at and go, "You guys did all that yourselves?" You know, that kind of like knowledge of just building it yourself and things like that, I feel is something I feel is kind of lost with people my age and younger.
That's one of the reasons why John and Sharon sold their painting business.
Mm.
Couldn't hire good help. I'm serious.
No, I know.
He was interviewing potential employees. There's one guy that showed up for an interview, said, "I'll work for you if you pay me $200 cash under the table."
Yeah, that's bad.
My students at Mount SAC had a punch a time clock.
Mm.
They punch in when they come to class, and they punch out at the end of class. But then, whatever project they're working on during class, they had to punch in when they started the project, and they had to punch out when they finished it.
To track the hours. Mm-hmm.
And I used to tell them, if you expect your boss to have money to pay you, you need to produce something that he can sell so he has money to pay you.
Mm.
In other words, don't just think because you're on the job and you're not doing anything, you're going to get paid at the end of the week. What's your boss going to pay you with if you don't help him earn something?
Right.
I think that's a lost concept too.
That is definitely a lost concept.
The other thing I've learned is there's no loyalty on the part of employees.
Mm. Yeah. As companies have gotten larger and larger and larger and more complicated, there's more and more jobs that people do that, you know, they just all they know is to come in, do a couple tasks, and then kind of twiddle their thumbs and wait and hope to get paid by the end of the week. You know, and how do you build loyalty with something like that?
I've also noticed that people that have experience, a lot of people are not willing to share that experience to help somebody grow in their position because they're afraid they'll take it away from them.
Yeah.
I could tell you lots of stories about students I've had. I had one in particular. I very seldom got kids directly out of high school. They'd usually been out of high school for a couple of years and were serious about being there. But I had three particular students that came directly from high school. And one of them turned out to be one of the best students I'd ever had. And I found him a good job working for a company in Ontario that manufactures racing engines.
Whoa.
The experienced help that was already there was intimidated by him because he had ideas on how to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
And he got so frustrated with them not letting him share his ideas with them because they were intimidated by him. He finally quit. And my granddaughter's fiance is facing a similar situation in his position with Gibson Guitars.
Nobody wants to have someone jump ahead of them.
The trained engineers that have a college degree in engineering are intimidated by him because he comes up with things that they wouldn't even thought of.
But they should embrace those ideas.
They don't, though.
No.
My experience with trained engineers out of Cal Poly, for example, the professors in that program have an elitist attitude, and they pass it on to their students. So it's not surprising that a degreed engineer in a situation like he's in would be intimidated by somebody. In other words, they feel like they're up here and you're down here until you take schooling and get up here to where they are, degree-wise. That's nonsense. The kid's smart. They were going to bring robots into the custom shop to try to save money. And he sat down and figured out a way they could save up to $400,000 a year and not even bother with robots. None of their trained engineers, their degreed engineers, ever thought about that, what he thought of.
Did they at least use that idea, or did they?
Not yet.
It is a shame. The world's changed so much. Like, one thing I've been, that comes up a lot is the trade jobs. There aren't as many. They say that it's like a 1 to 2 week wait for just a house plumber to help you out. That's how few there are of plumbers now.
I blame our education system for that.
Yeah, one of the things I remember growing up was, I remember them telling us they weren't upright saying, don't be a plumber, don't be an electrician. But I remember there was a disdain for those jobs. Like, oh, you don't want to do that. Go to college, do these other things, right?
Get a degree in something that there are no jobs.
Right. And when you're
I met a person that happened to him.
What was that?
I met a person that happened to her. I taught a machine shop class during the summer at Chaffey College, back when they had a shop. This lady had a bachelor's degree in biology. I said, what are you doing in a machine shop? I can't find a job in my field. I said, I blame your counselor for that.
Yeah. Well, I like how you just said this right now. You said back when Chaffey had a machine shop. See, they got rid of it.
All the high schools, as far as I know.
They did. High schools, when I was in high school, we didn't have a machine shop. We had wood shop class, and when I took a extra course at the neighboring high school to get a auto shop class, but that wasn't my high school that had it. I had to go over to another neighboring school for that. And that's where I remember they taught us welding and using working with sheet metal, bending sheet metal, sanding down sheet metal, all that other stuff. I did learn that stuff when I was in that class. Unfortunately, I took it because I wanted to learn, but that class was like an extra credit class kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I went there with wanting to learn, but every other person in that class was a student that was on the verge of dropping out. So they were taking that class so they didn't get kicked out of high school.
Yeah.
So it was a very, for lack of a better term, remedial class. And I remember it was just when I started going there, I started with excitement to go to those classes. But then by the end of it, I was just waiting for it to end because you know, like the kids there were just a different type, and stealing stuff from each other. There was always fights breaking out in that class and stuff. It was bad. So it wasn't a very nice experience. But there is some stuff from that class that I do remember and keep with me, and I do wish that that was more of an option for kids. Because yeah, apparently now high schools they don't even have anything like that anymore.
The schools in Europe are not like that.
Really?
When you get to a certain point in your education, you got to make a decision. I'm going the university track. I'm going the vocational track.
Mm.
I had a secretary that worked for me when I was department chair at Mount SAC. She was from Germany. She said, in my country, the doctors and the machinists live in the same neighborhood right next to each other, and they both get the same respect. And it's because the educational system in Europe doesn't put down the people that learn by using their hands.
Right. Right.
That's what's wrong with our educational system in this country.
And it's true when you said it was passed down. It was, because when I was going into community college and stuff, I was like, well, I can't do a vocational job. That's not good. Like, I don't know why I thought that. Like now I'm older now and I'm like, that was dumb to think. But for some reason when I was 18 and 19, that was the thought process that was going through my head. It was almost like if I was to go a vocational route, that would be disappointing.
According to the educational system in the state, yes.
Yeah. It's very silly to think about now. And I do regret not, you know, taking more classes of that kind of stuff. Because I would have liked it. Because I did take that auto shop class. I liked it. It was just, but the situation was a little rough. But I did enjoy it. And I do wish that they'd bring those kinds of stuff back for kids that are younger now.
At least give the kid an option.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's nice to know. I mean, when I was in high school, we did have woodshop, and I could take woodshop if I wanted to. I didn't take it, but I knew it was there, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, and I knew kids that did take it, and they really liked it. So, and I didn't think badly of it. But now, if it's not even, the option isn't even there, you know, no one's even gonna think about it.
In a lot of schools, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the mindset of our educational system in this state.
Mm.
They don't realize that people don't all learn the same way. The reason I wound up with a C average in high school and college is because I'm not an auditory learner. I'm a visual learner. I learn by doing.
Mm-hmm.
I had a kid in my machine shop class at Mount SAC. The poor kid was illiterate. He was a first generation Mexican American, and his family go beyond grade school. He barely did well enough, that's back when the lecture and the lab were separate classes and separate grade. He barely managed to pass the lecture part. But I'll never forget what he told me his last semester when he took his last advanced class from me. He said, I just wanted you to know I've got the best paying job I've ever had because I was here. He's a visual learner.
Yeah. He learned the lab he did really well in.
You got to remember, the educational system in the state is run by academic mindsets. I'd be willing to bet you if you went to Mount SAC right now and talked to the counselors over there and asked them what was the last time you were in the Building 28, where the technical stuff is taught. When I first went to Mount SAC, I had a counselor that was assigned specific to our program. He'd had his own business. He knew what it was like to earn a living working with your hands. And he related to what we were doing. And during the years, the 30-some years I worked there, little by little, the counselors retired and they were replaced by academics. And I'd faint if a counselor walked into my lab the last few years I worked there. They weren't interested in that stuff.
Right.
Who's going to go? Who's going to take the classes there anyway?
Mm.
They're all going to get a college degree in some academic subject,
Mm-hmm.
which is nonsense.
Right.
You got me up on my soapbox, didn't you?
I didn't mean to. It was just part of the conversation. I mean, but it's in the same topic, you know, because the main reason why I wanted to do this was I remember Grandma telling me a story when she was young, when they moved from someplace in Oklahoma to somewhere else in Oklahoma. They loaded everything up on a horse and buggy, and they traveled on a horse and buggy. And it was like the thought of that was so culture shocking to me.
That you actually knew somebody who had actually done that.
Yeah, you know, because you see it in movies, Little House on the Prairie, stuff like that. But I didn't really think about it. And I asked her, I said, you guys, I mean, and I wasn't saying this out of ignorance. I was thinking about it. I was like, there were cars invented by then, right? And she said, well, yeah, but nobody had one. The cars were expensive. You know, it was like, it just wasn't common to see one. And they knew of them. And I was just like, oh, well, then I kind of thought about it that way. And I was like, oh, okay, huh. And then when I was working in Japan, there was a gentleman that was a bartender there that I would, at this bar that I would frequent, Australian guy. And he would just tell me, he was 60, he was 60 years old, and he would just tell me stories of like growing up in like the more rural areas of Australia, and just like oh, we had to do this, we had to build this, we had to do this, we had to do that. And I was just like, that is such a different life experience. And there was no way for me growing up to even see anything like that. Like, oh, the neighbor wants a house, so we built it. You know, or oh, then, you know, our cousin down the street, their electricity, they don't have electricity, or their electricity went out, so we went in there and replaced it all. Like, my life growing up was, oh, there's an electrical problem, you have to get an electrician, or there's an uncle or there's an uncle or a cousin that knows how to do it, and they'd come in and do it. But it was still more of like it was something that, it was like, it's something that they knew. So I looked at it as something that you had to learn. But when that bartender was telling me these things, he's like, no, like, learning stuff about electric or building with it, that was just common knowledge with a lot of us in the neighborhood. Yeah. Everybody in the neighborhood knew how to do that. And I'm like, so that's what I find fascinating. And it's the soapbox, getting on the soapbox isn't what I wanted to do. It's just kind of like a product of my fascination with the idea of working with wood or building construction stuff that was common knowledge, and how that's kind of like a lost common knowledge. It's weird how we've moved so far in the future, and learned so much stuff, but something that was common before, like plumbing, electricity, wood, carpentry, is now no longer common knowledge.
You know, I built the add-on that we did to our house back in the 70s. You know, I did most of that work myself.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
It wasn't I didn't have help.
Uh-huh.
I had a contractor friend that helped me design it and poured the concrete slab. And the people that used to live in your house, he was a framer in construction, and he helped me with the frame of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I did all the electrical work myself. The only thing I didn't do was the stucco on the outside
Mm.
and the roof. I did bring in somebody to texture the drywall.
Yeah. But it's
But the
understandable.
basic construction, I did the whole thing myself.
Yeah. It's understandable to bring in someone to do like a little extra thing to because they're better at that part, right? But still, the fact that you did like 80% of it on your own is like mind blowing to me.
Yep.
And that's what I find fascinating. And that's kind of like why I wanted to do these things, was sit down with people and then hear their stories and their life experiences that were just common to them, which to me feels so alien.
Yeah, we started that project when I did the add-on to the house in the latter part of June of 1973, 72, whatever. And we painted Thanksgiving weekend.
Hmm.
So it took from June to November basically to build that room
That's a pretty big section.
and make it livable.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a little over 600 square feet.
Wow. Huh. But similar to what you said before, you and the three of you guys over a course of a summer tore down a house and built a new house.
Yep.
It's very interesting to me.
I can't go back as far as horse and buggy, but I can go back to the horse and wagon.
Mm.
When I was let's say when I was 5 years old, my dad had a car, but it only had 2 seats in it.
Mm-hmm.
And in a family of 3, it'd be kind of crowded in a 2-seat car. It was a Model T. We had a car, but it only held 2 people. So when my family needed to go to town to get groceries or whatever, we hooked the horses to the wagon, and we all rode the wagon 5 miles into town and back.
Huh.
And not too long after we moved to the quote-unquote new farm,
Right.
which, by the way, was the original farm I grew up, where I was born, was 100 acres. We're down to less than half of that at 38.
Mm. How long would it take you guys to plow like the 100 or 30, whatever the acres were of this farm? Like how long would that take to get it ready to be tilled for
Probably several days.
several days?
I
And
fortunately,
did you use like was it a horse pulled plow or an ox plow?
fortunately in my case, I only did that for a little while, and very little with the horse-drawn plow.
Mm.
It wasn't too long after that I got old enough that my dad bought a tractor.
Mm.
And from then on until I moved to California, whatever farming we did with a tractor.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that was a very welcomed.
One of the things I enjoy was plowing the cornfield at night.
Yeah. Why?
It was nice and cool for one thing.
It gives you time to, have time to think, have time to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fortunately, most of the farming, I did a bunch of it as my dad did. My brother never got involved in it because he wasn't old enough.
Ah.
And my dad had already, my senior year in high school, my dad had to take a job in the town.
When did your dad kind of, close the book on the farming?
After I moved out here.
Moved out here.
Yeah, he sold the 25 acres of the farm to a neighbor who planted most of it in Concord grapes.
Mm. And that's the grapes that you guys were selling to Welch's?
We had a smaller field of grapes, and I don't know if he just added on or added more. I don't know which, but most of that 25 acres was Concord grapes.
I remember Grandma in her backyard had that grapevine, and I would go out there, and when I was like staying over there, I'd go out there and just like pick and eat the grapes off the vine.
The purple?
The green.
Okay, that's the Thompson seedless.
Yeah, the green ones. Yeah.
I tried growing those in my house when I lived there, and the birds would get them before I got them.
Well, my story with it is that I'd go out there and picking and eating them, and I remember I was like, sometimes I'd eat some. I wouldn't think about it. I'd just eat them, and sometimes I'm like, this one tastes weird or something like that. And then I remember I grabbed one time, and I grabbed it and I was about to eat it, and I see little legs moving from it. I'm holding on. That's not a grape. That's a spider. Who knows how many? And it was like the same color as the grapes. And they were like camouflaged in there. So then I was looking back and I was like, oh no, how many of those spiders did I eat?
That's definitely gross.
Oh yeah, it still haunts me to this day. But yeah, I remember that grapevine. It was really. But other than the spiders, the grapes were very delicious. Very delicious.
And Concord grapes are definitely an eating grape.
Mm. What color are the Concord grapes?
Purple.
Oh, they're the purple ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a lot of byproducts come from Concord grapes too.
What other food prep stuff did you guys do? Because you said you had an ice box. But what were other some ways that you guys would store food so it would last?
My mother canned a lot. Green beans, tomatoes. We ate tomatoes as a dessert.
Really? I've never had tomatoes as a dessert. So what did you guys do?
We put sugar on them and ate them for dessert.
Just regular white sugar?
Yeah.
Huh. I've never had that. My mom will eat tomatoes sliced with salt.
Yeah, most people treat them as a vegetable.
Yeah.
But I was going to tell you that part of the time growing up, we had an ice box, and then the ice plant in town added frozen food lockers that you could rent.
Mm-hmm.
So now we had the ability to freeze food.
Mm.
So my mom, when they butchered hogs in the fall, instead of having to eat the tenderloin for breakfast,
You can just freeze it.
while it was fresh, we can now make pork chops and freeze them.
Right.
But it was still all pork or chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday dinner at my house when I was growing up, if we had my grandparents over for dinner, for example, my parents would fix one chicken for the whole family.
And how many people would that be?
Well, there's 4 of us and 2 of my grandparents, 6.
Okay.
But there's only 2 drumsticks, only 2 wings.
One chicken.
So my granddad and I would fight over the liver and the gizzard because we both liked them.
Who'd win?
Both of us. One of them take one and one of them take the other. I still like chicken liver.
Yeah?
But there's only one place I know of you can get it prepared.
Donahue's.
Donahue's.
Yep. My mom goes there and gets it chicken liver, and when I was a child, hated chicken liver. Always hated it when you'd go there, and but I'd always try it because my mom would always buy it, and she'd be like, "This is delicious," and I'd be like, "How is this delicious?" I couldn't figure out why she thinks it's delicious, and I eat it. Ugh. And then that's how I was. And then when I went to Japan, they kind of do the same thing with chicken. They eat every part of it, right? When you go out to an izakaya, which is kind of like a go out and eat with friends or family kind of thing. And you can get these chicken skewers, and every part of the chicken you can buy can be on this skewer. And a couple times, some of my Japanese friends would, and I'd be like, "What's this?" They'd be like, "Eat it," and I'd be like, "What is it?" "Eat it," and I'd be like, "Okay, oh, it's pretty good. What is this?" "Chicken liver." And I was like, "What?"
So the like or dislike of chicken liver is in your head.
I guess so. And then I came back, and my mom, we got Donahue's when I came back, and I was excited because I love Donahue's, and she ordered chicken liver, and I ate it, and I was like, I don't hate chicken liver anymore. Took me 31 years.
Before I was married and had a job, I rented a upstairs room in a house on 9th Street. And then later on I had to move into upstairs with this family that went to my church. I shared it with a couple of 3 Chafee College students. But there was a cafe on Holt in Ontario that I used to eat 2 of my meals every day. Mm. And on their menu, in the evening, they had what they call a Blue Plate Special.
Blue Plate?
Blue Plate Special. That's what they called it.
Okay.
And one of the nights was rabbit.
Ooh.
Tastes like chicken.
I've had rabbit jerky. I've never had rabbit, like a leg of rabbit.
The other thing they had was liver and onions. That's beef liver.
Oh, beef liver.
That I don't care for.
Yeah, I was going to say beef liver still, I haven't.
For one thing, I don't like onions.
Yeah. So your rabbit tastes like chicken. Do you remember, like, how was it prepared? Like stewed?
No, it was cooked, fried, I think.
Fried? Sounds pretty delicious. I'd try rabbit. I'm a pretty adventurous eater, so like I said, I tried to like liver for years, and then until finally I was like, oh, okay, it's not. But I kept trying it over and over and over again, but it always was like, eh.
You just had to try it in the right environment.
The right environment. Try it in a different. It was prepared differently. It was grilled.
Yeah.
Fire grilled. And I guess when I had it that way, I was like, oh, okay. I like it this way. Let me look at my card here. See if there's any other questions that I wanted to ask. What is your favorite Nelda memory?
I don't know if it's my favorite or not, but when I moved to California, I whistled a lot.
You were what a lot?
Whistled.
A whistle.
And we were on a date one night. We were driving down Euclid, just below Foothill, and I was whistling up a storm, and she reached over and stuck her finger in my mouth. And another time we were on a date, and we were driving down Mission Boulevard in Pomona. And, of course, the car that I had, the 48 Chevy sedan, you could seat 3 people in the front seat. Mm-hmm. So she was sitting next to me, and I had my arm on the back of the seat around her. The cop pulled me over. Said, you shouldn't be driving with your arm around her. So why don't you mind your own business?
Man, even back in the day, cops pulling
Even
people
back
over
in
for
the
nothing.
Before we had kids, on Labor Day weekend, we'd take our little 9x9 tent and pack the car, our 57 Chevy two-door hardtop, with all of our camping gear, ice chest and camp stove, and we'd drive up to the high country in Yosemite,
Mm.
about
Yosemite.
9,000 feet elevation.
Yep.
And one night the first time we tried it, we had a short-legged cot we slept on with a sleeping bag.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the night, we were freezing.
Oh yeah, it gets
We had
so
we had to
cold
get in the car and turn the heater on. So the next year, we got rid of the cot and slept on the ground.
there. Uh-huh.
But we went to bed one night. The next time or two we went, we had a 2-gallon water bucket sitting in the campsite. We got up the next morning, it was frozen solid.
Oh.
So we'd spend all day during the daytime going up in the timber and finding dead wood
Mm-hmm.
for firewood to
To melt your...
keep warm, keep warm at night. Then on Monday morning, on Memorial Day, all the campers that were down in the valley would leave and go home.
Mm-hmm.
And we go down there and we pretty much had to pick up campsites.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that up until, I think the last time we camped was Nulla was expecting Jonathan. That would have been 1964. And I don't recall being back since then.
You haven't been to Yosemite since?
Huh?
You haven't been to Yosemite since then?
Uh-uh.
Oh.
Went a lot of years before
Mm.
when Nulla and I were first married.
Did you see, because back then, didn't they do the thing where they do the fire fall?
They did.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody the other day, I have a slide picture that I took that nobody will ever be able to take it again.
Mm. And it's of the fire.
No,
Oh.
Mirror Lake.
Mirror Lake.
It's not there anymore.
Oh.
I took a picture of Half Dome
Mm.
reflection in Mirror Lake.
Whoa.
Nobody will ever be able to repeat that picture because Mirror Lake's not there anymore.
Huh.
It's a meadow now.
Because of the drought? Just dried up?
I don't know, it's just gone over after years.
Mm. Wow. I love Yosemite. One of my early memories, I remember I went there with my mom, and we stayed in one of those, it wasn't a tent, but it was like
Cabin.
it wasn't a cabin. They were like these, it was like an in-between tent cabin thing.
Yeah,
It was like a white.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was. I wish it was a cabin because it was so cold. This is my coldest life memory, and the funny thing is, I probably wasn't as cold as I remember it, but for some reason I was just so cold, and I remember like there was 2 cots. We were sleeping on cots, and I couldn't sleep. I was so cold, shivering in my sleeping bag. I just could not sleep. And I remember hearing people screaming and gunshots because there was a bear. I guess a bear got into someone's like tent or something like that. I remember people yelling and screaming and bang, stuff like that with a gun. And then I was scared and cold. So eventually I had to go to my mom and was like, Mom, can I I think I had been like 6 or 7 or something. And I just woke her up and I was like, I can't sleep. I'm so cold. And I climbed in her and I slid into the sleeping bag and I was able to sleep. But that, for some reason, that memory is my coldest life memory. The funny thing is, I've probably been in colder situations. But for some reason, that memory, I just remember being frigid. and I think it was snowy, but it wasn't super super snowy. But it was. So who knows what the temperature was? Who knows? But yeah.
You know, my memory being the coldest was in Arkansas. There ain't anything worse than being wet and cold at the same time.
Mm,
And that happened in Arkansas.
would it rain?
I don't know, for some reason or other, I was wet and cold at the same time.
Oh, because even when it's cold, it's still humid.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Oof. Oof. What time are we at right now, Marco?
302.
3:02. I have one more question then. What is one memory that you regret that you didn't get to put in your book?
I realized when I finished my book, there was so much about Nelda that I hadn't covered.
Mm.
So I wrote an addition that I'm in the process of rewriting my book. And I'm going to add what I wrote about her to the end of that. And then after that, after the end of her book, her pages about her, I'm writing an update on what's happened since I finished my book,
Mm-hmm.
which was July of 2020.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to end it, but it occurred to me the other day, maybe a way to end it. And I just yesterday or today, I just went back and found the end of these two stories, my story and hers. And the next section is going to be a look back. And in that, I'm going to talk about some of the things we've talked about today,
Mm.
how things have changed since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to end it with that.
That's
In her part of the book, we even included the Hopper stories that Nelda used to tell the kids.
The Hopper stories?
Yeah.
Maybe she told me these ones, but I don't know. What were the Hopper stories?
They were more like, I don't know if moral stories is the right word to use or not, but like, for example, when up until sometime in the later 70s, they built the houses behind me.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing but brush out there, and the kids loved to play out there.
Oh, okay.
And she used to tell a Hopper story about why it's not good to go out there by yourself.
Mm.
That kind of that's the kind of stories the Hopper story was.
Oh, okay.
She had a name for all the kids. Anyway, when we were going through stuff, when I told them I was going to move out and move into a retirement place, we found some of her handwritten Hopper stories.
Oh.
And I took pictures of them and I've included them in her handwriting
Mm-hmm.
at the end of her book.
Nice.
There's about 6 of them, I think, that nobody ever bothered to record them.
Mm. Something like that you don't really think about until way later.
Yeah. One of the things I've told people after I wrote my book, I would tell people it's my life story and I'm sticking to it.
Mm.
It's something every family ought to do. Sharon's mom is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
When she passed away, all of the history she had as a little kid growing up in Germany, she actually lived through the Holocaust,
Yeah.
but she didn't want to talk about it, understandably.
Right.
I wrote my book primarily for the benefit of my 2 younger kids, because they were only in Arkansas one time, and that's when my mom died.
Mm.
and for anybody else in the family that was interested in what happened during my lifetime.
Mhm.
I have a cousin. She's the daughter of my dad's oldest brother, who divorced her mom when she was still little and married another woman. And until 1994, she had no direct connection with the Shepherds.
Mm.
And she read my book. And she said, in reading my book, it filled in a lot of gaps in her life that she missed by not being active part of the family anymore
Mhm.
for a long time, until 94 when her dad died.
Your book that you wrote, what is it on? Like, how can people access it?
I think I have 3 copies left.
How many copies left?
I didn't self-publish it.
Uh-huh.
I self-printed it.
Mhm.
I ordered 100 copies from this printer in Ontario.
Mhm.
And it's about 80 pages, I think.
Mhm.
It'll be probably about 10 or 15 more pages when I add Nelda's part of the story to it
Okay.
and the update. So it might even be 100 pages. I'm not going to have 100 of them printed this time. It cost me $14 a book
Whew.
to have the 100 printed. But I didn't want to mess with a publisher.
Mm.
But I think I have 3 copies left, and John may have a few copies in the glove box of his truck.
Mhm.
I've just been giving away to all kinds of people.
Mhm.
2 of my therapists, my occupational therapist and my physical therapist, they both have copies.
Nice.
The nurse that comes and does my infusion once a month, he has a copy. If in a conversation with whoever, and it comes up, say, here, I have a copy of my book.
All right. We'll put a little reference at the bottom of this video. Put a little call line. If you're interested in having this book, please call 1-800. Can be yours for $19.99.
I wasn't interested in making any money off of it. I just
Nah.
wanted my story told.
Yeah, it's all about just having the story told. Exactly.
As far as I know, all of my immediate family have a copy.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they read it or not, that's another story.
But they have it.
They have it. Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome.
For doing this.
This is fun.
Yeah, it was great. And hopefully, we can do another one. Like you said, you've got more stories and stuff to tell. Also, you have these amazing 3D printer stuff. We didn't even get a chance to talk too much about that. Maybe we can do that again. Talk more about the 3D printer stuff.
Yeah, I'm in kind of transition between a simple to use machine and one that's much more complex.
Mm.
I think it's the software that goes with it. The machine itself is pretty simple,
Mm-hmm.
but the software that goes with it, it's so much different from anything I've used before.
Mm.
Much more complex. Well, just how do you color a part that you want to be multicolored?
Right. I wouldn't even know.
I didn't until yesterday when I watched that video. The guy explained how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know where to start. I'm getting ready to send a text message to my friend. Are you available next week?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Anytime.
There it is.